hair laying and punching. In this video, we're going to go over the basics of applying hair to a silicone head. Now, this is the end of a 6-part series, so if you missed the others, definitely go back and check for those. I've got those linked on the end screen if you want to check them all out. But this is part 6. In the previous videos, I made a sculpture out of monster clay, then made a mold of that with resin, and then cast this up using 5110F platinum silicone. And then, of course, I took that, cleaned it up, patched it, seamed it, and then painted it with more 5110F platinum silicone. And now we're at the final stage of finishing applying hair. So in this tutorial, we're going to cover the process of hand laying hair as well as hair punching. Now this is more of an overview than anything else, but this will give you the basic knowledge you need for applying hair to a silicone creation, especially one cast out of something like the 5110F platinum silicone. Now the supplies for this video are pretty simple. The main thing that you need to run down is some silicone adhesive or silicone sealant. This is Locktite clear silicone. This is for sealing aquariums, and you can find this at most hardware stores. Then the other things you're going to need is some false eyelashes and some human hair. Now I lucked out because my daughter that I'm making this for, she had a significant amount of her hair chopped off last year, and she saved that, and we're going to be applying that to this little creation. Now to begin, I'm going to use a dental spatula, a smaller size dental spatula, and these are cheap steel tools, stainless steel tools. A lot of these, if they're not for medical use, you can pick these up at most hobby stores. They're pretty easy to access, but they're great for this kind of work, and I'm just applying a little bit of that silicone adhesive to the eyelids, and I'm going to use that to glue on those false eyelashes. Since obviously we don't want to use regular eyelash adhesive because we're not sticking this to a human, we're sticking this to a piece of silicone. So regular eyelash adhesive, I believe, is a latex-based or similar cosmetic grade adhesive, and it will not stick to silicone. So real important to make sure you're using silicone to stick other things to silicone. And this is a little tricky. You just want to use that dental spatula to push that into place. And I actually trimmed these eyelashes down a little bit because this is obviously a little smaller than a human head. So I trimmed off about 1/4 of an inch off that eyelash so that it would fit properly where I want it to go. And then I'm just pushing that eyelash into place using that dental spatula into that very thin little layer of silicone adhesive that I applied to that eyelid. And you want to move fast because when you're applying silicone adhesive like this in a really thin, small area, it's going to dry faster than when it's a thicker area. So you want to move quick because that silicone adhesive is difficult to remove once it's in place. Now I usually let those eyelashes dry for a couple of hours before I proceed, but now we're ready to start hand laying hair. And we're going to do the hair application in 2 stages, hand laying, which is kind of like laying down shingles, and then punching. And here's that hair that was recycled off of Raya's head. So we're actually, I don't even think I used half of this for this head, so I might actually make another one with the leftover hair. But what you want to think about before you start is kind of a rough map of how you're going to apply your hair, because again, it's kind of like shingles. You start at the bottom and then work up so each layer falls down over the previous layer. So you're going to work in rows, and because this is a pretty simple silicone head, we don't really have to keep those rows as tight as we would for a prop head for a film or something like that. But we're going to lay that down in rows like shingles, and then when we start getting up to the top of the head, the last third or so of the head will be punched. So that last part of the scalp leading up to the hairline, all of that will be punched with a needle. And we'll go over the needle and how to make your own punch needle here in a minute later in the video. So now ready to start laying hair. And this is pretty straightforward. You just use a dental spatula to lay down a thin bead of silicone adhesive. And you want to keep that thin so that it dries quickly. And then you're just going to fan out that hair that you have. And this is really helpful if it's cut off at a straight edge. So you can fan that out a little bit and then use your dental spatula to press that into the adhesive. And because that is a clear silicone adhesive, it feathers out nicely into the surrounding silicone. And this is where it's important to make sure that you're working with clean silicone, because you're going to get the best bond with that silicone sealant when you're applying this to clean silicone. So this is another argument for making sure your piece stays free of any oil or dirt on your part, and keep it away from any overspray of mold release that might be going on elsewhere in your shop. So it's always good to have a clean, dedicated area for hair work so you don't accidentally contaminate anything. And you'll see I'm just slowly working up the back of the head, just fanning that out, just grabbing little tufts of hair. And like I said, if you need to, you can clip those so they're straighter, but these are already pretty straight at that cutoff edge. And then just use your dental spatula to press that into that bead of silicone adhesive. And as long as you don't disturb each of the previous layers, you can work pretty fast building those up as you go along, and then just let those all dry together. So this is a few hours later. I let this dry, and now I'm ready to come back and start doing my hair punching. Now, to punch hair, you need a hair punching needle. So we're going to explain how to make that and some of the different variables involved. What I usually do is start with some small sewing needles. These are a little bigger than I usually use, but I wanted them to show up on video. So a little larger needle than we actually need here. But again, you'll see why that's necessary, so you can even see that later on. But the smaller the eye of the needle, the better. And what we're going to be doing is the eye of the needle is going to actually be the business end of the hair punching tool. And you're going to open up that eye of the needle to create a tiny fork shape using a grinding wheel. A bench grinder or a Dremel tool can be used to do this, but you're going to grind off that eye of the needle at a slight angle, and that is what is going to create your hair punching tool. So I'll show an illustration of that that'll make it make a little bit more sense. But we're going to take that and put it needle first into our X-Acto handle. And now we're ready to grind off the eye of the needle to create the hair punching tool. So here's what it looks like in close up. So what we're going to do is grind off the top third or so of that eye of the needle to create our hair punching tool. So again, we're kind of creating an irregular fork shape. And this will make more sense when you see how the tool is used later on, but we're going to grind off that about a third of that needle eye. And what that does is it leaves us with a short prong on top and a longer prong on the bottom. And that longer prong is used to grab hairs out of a tuft of hair. And then that shorter prong on top holds it in place as we're pushing that into the silicone. And there's the finished eye of the needle ground down. And this one I didn't grind probably as far as I usually would. Again, I wanted to make sure this would show up on video, because that's the thing. They're almost the best hair punching needles are the really small ones. And you want one that will grab as few of hairs as possible. So in some cases, if you're doing a lot of hair punching work, it really helps to have multiple punch needles that can handle different volumes of hair. So when you're doing the back of the hairline where it's not as visible, you can use your tool to grab like 10, 20, 30 hairs at a time. But as you get up closer to the hairline, you're going to grab fewer and fewer hairs until you're grabbing just one hair at a time. Now, the way hair punching works is you're folding the hairs in half, and then the hair is being embedded, that folded edge of the hair is being embedded in the silicone. And it's the tension of the rubber material, the silicone rubber, that's grabbing the hair and holding it into place. So if you pull hard enough, you can pull hair out that's been punched this way, but once you get enough hair punched in, you could easily pick up a head by the hair and it not come out. So that surface tension is what's holding that in place. Now, if you're doing a piece that's real critical, where there might be a lot of stress on that hair later on, there's times where it makes sense to punch that in and then turn your skin inside out and apply some silicone sealant or adhesive on the inside of the skin to glue that in place, which is takes a little bit more pre-planning to do that, but that way you can make sure that's all anchored in place. But for most applications, especially something like this, that is not necessary at all. Now, it's real important to also remember that the direction you're punching in is the direction the hair will come out of the head. So for punching hair all over a head like this, punching straight down like I'm doing here is fine. But remember that when you punch straight down, that means that hair is going to come up and straight out of the head. And when you start doing things like eyebrows and facial hair, that's where you have to be really careful about the direction that you're punching. And you'll see that sometimes it makes sense to flip that head over at a different angle so you can punch at a really steep angle, because that way you get the hair coming out of the head much like it would be growing out. So just be mindful of that as you're applying your hair, and remember that exactly the angle you punch that in, that's the angle it's going to come out. So eyebrows, if you punch them straight down, they're going to come out straight like brushes. So be aware of that and punch accordingly. Now, the other thing is the silicone. The softness of the silicone plays into this as well. You'll find that a really soft silicone doesn't punch as well. When you start getting down into the really soft silicones, like say the 5100, that's about a 0020. And sometimes the softer silicones like that will do one of two things. Either they're so soft they don't grab the hair as well, or you'll find that it leaves an indentation where you do your punching, or leaves a larger hole than you would like. So that's one of those things. You can explore that on your own and see what you like best. But in my opinion, the best silicone for hair punching is typically found in that range from around a 5 Shore A up to about a 20 or 25 Shore A. When you start getting firmer than that, you can start breaking your hair punching needles. And again, softer than that, you start winding up with some distortion on the skin where you're punching. So be mindful of that. And again, main thing you want to be aware of is the angle of the punch, because if you're punching straight in, the hair comes straight out. Now, my daughter thought she was looking a little too cute, and she was going more for the idea of like Quato from Total Recall from 1990. So as I got closer to the hairline, I backed off the density of the hair and gave her more of that kind of patchy, mutant-looking hair, kind of that scraggly hair. But the main thing you want to be aware of when you're making a head like this is obviously your hair is part of your design. So if we want that scraggly hair, that's obviously the direction we want to go. But typically, if you're mimicking a real human hairline, as you get closer to the actual hairline, you want to try to get down to punching single hairs whenever possible, and try to get those as close together as possible. And then you are done. And of course, the beauty of hair punching, if you're not using adhesive, you can carefully pull those hairs back out if you put them somewhere they shouldn't be, or they're too dense, or however you want to adjust that look, you can always pull that back out. So now you can make your very own parasitic twin for your own costume. So I'll do a follow-up video with my daughter's finished costume, but now you see the finished result. And for those of you who just joined us on this video, be sure to check the end screen for the previous videos in this series. And if you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe and share accordingly. And of course, click the little bell icon so you get notified when I post new material. Thanks for watching, and of course, be sure to check out the end screen here with some of the previous tutorials leading up to this video. Thanks for watching.